It was wet. It was cold. I felt miserable. I felt great. Well, that's true. But above all, I learned a lot about myself. I pushed my limits. I made great friends. So keep on watching and follow me deep in the Scottish Highlands.
Endurance sports are well studied scientifically, and there are trillions of published articles on how to prepare, train and race. However, it has many times proved impossible to implement standard endurance sports science into training for ultra distances. This leaves many of us who run ultramarathons in a trial and error mode, where each one of us is an individual study of one. After a couple of failed attempts, I managed to run my first ultra in 2015. Despite looking victorious in these pictures, in reality I was really destroyed and needed half a year before I could put on my running shoes again. I have always been an adventurer, but as many others, pursuing career and building a family were prioritized. One day I realized that actually running can be my way out of the daily routines and my ticket to adventure. Despite living in a big urban area, the adventure could still be found around the next corner. I purchased a new pair of well-cushioned running shoes and started training from scratch by building miles and miles in very low pace, slowly improving my aerobic base. With the build-up of mileage, my confidence grew and my passion for adventure reignited. I started considering testing my limits in a multi-day race, such as Marathon des Sables, where people run 250 kilometers in Sahara for 5 days and carry all their equipment on their backs. However, the existence of too many variables, such as extreme heat and many days of back-to-back marathons, meant that I always felt underprepared. So I decided to start with something less intimidating. Then I came across a company called Beyond the Ultimate. These guys were specializing in organizing extreme races in extreme environments. They were now preparing their first race in Europe. 3 days, 125 kilometers, 5,000 meters of elevation in remote Scottish wilderness. It was self-sufficient, which meant the runner had to carry all food and equipment for the 3 days in the wild. That is what I call an adventure. I signed up immediately. I now had to plan for something new, prepare me mentally and physically for the challenge of racing in the middle of nowhere with all my food and mandatory equipment on my back. Finally, after long anticipation, the day for departure came. I took an early flight from Copenhagen to the beautiful city of Edinburgh. After a short sightseeing session, I continued my journey with a train. It took me on a 7.5-hour journey through the Western Highlands, undoubtedly one of the most beautiful and picturesque railways in the world. The final destination of the train was a small village called Malaig, a small community relying mostly on fishing and tourism for its income. Despite being a final stop for the train, for me and for the rest of the runners, this was only the first step of our adventure. A 45-minute boat trip through the rough waters of Loch Nevis is the only way to reach Knoydart. Despite technically being a peninsula, practically this is an island. Knoydart is not connected to Scotland's road system and is regarded as one of Europe's last remaining wildernesses. The area is actually so remote that there is no network coverage. The only contact with the outside world was with Iridium satellite transmitters, which were provided to each runner at the start line. Knoydart has only around 100 inhabitants, mostly living in Inverie. This small settlement is also the home of Britain's remotest pub. After a fast kit check, we were ready to move to our tents and prepare for the race on the following day.
I don't know when we're ready. 3, 2, 1.
The race began on the beach near Inverie. We set off on the peninsula's only road, winding along the coast. We all felt strong and enjoyed the beautiful scenery unraveling around us. I soon joined Brian, an inspirational ultra runner who has, by the way, run in the MDS twice. The second time dressed as a rhino in order to raise funds for charity. The nice road soon ended. According to the original plan, we had to cross this big river and continue on a 4x4 track on the other side.
You okay?
However, due to dangerously high water levels, the race organizers changed the route and we continued our journey on a single track which consisted of boulders, streams and long stretches of boggy, muddy terrain with some knee-deep swampy areas.
Oh shit.
We were soon back on a hard-packed trail. At this point we were running as a trio along with Kim. The weather was good, spirits were high, and the kilometers just went by. The first checkpoint for the day was back in Inverie, and it was the only place where we could refill with fresh water. The rest of the water was refilled on the way, in the hundreds of small streams, using a filter bottle. It was provided by the race organizers, and at least for me, greatly increased the feeling of adventure and independence. The first 5 kilometers after Inverie provided gradual climb and beautiful runnable trail along rivers, lochs and surrounded by mountains. Despite a pack weighing almost 6 kilos, at this moment I could sustain a pretty decent tempo and still manage to enjoy the beautiful scenery around me. After passing the big loch, the terrain changed. It quickly became dominated by mud, deep moss, streams and small rivers.
Pretty rough. Well, path is almost a river, a little bit more walkable and runnable right now.
The angle of the climb soon changed to more than 45 degrees. The weather quickly changed from bad to worse. The temperature started to plummet very fast. It is now that I finally understand what the word gnarly means. If you're not sure about the meaning, don't look in the dictionary, just come here and see for yourself.
The hilltop, right over there. Over there. Highest point for the day. Okay, that's it. Now it's downhill.
I was now again at sea level. The remaining 10k for the day were along one of the Scotland's most beautiful coastal trails. Unfortunately, at this moment, I could not enjoy it to the fullest. Due to a combination between fatigue, worsening weather, early signs of hypothermia, and technical terrain, I was forced to severely cut down on the tempo in order to prevent injury. It would take 2 more days before I would return here and enjoy running along this Scottish jewel for real.
Here.
Day 2 was a 41-kilometer loop with more than 2000 meters elevation gain. After a couple of painkillers in the morning, I was ready for the challenge. The steep climb felt quite challenging after running 50 kilometers the previous day. The terrain was familiar from the previous day. Basically, water, mud, and then more water and mud.
This one is crazy. How can that happen?
How is that possible? I don't think I'll ever get the dry shoes and dry socks for granted again.
Red deer were abundant in the area. We could hear their calls constantly. However, the area was so vast that they were difficult to be seen. Brian's sniper vision was often required in order to spot them in the hills.
Steep bit, the white where the snow is, yeah? And then if you come down, there's a couple of hills. Yeah. And then you come down straight, and then there's a number of rivulets coming down. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
The angle of the hill was again at least 45 degrees. The view, however, would compensate for all the suffering.
Oh, nice. We're in the right place.
Oh, I feel I need to take a picture of this.
Yeah.
Shit, it's beautiful here.
Isn't it?
Look at the skyline here.
It's magnificent.
Amazing. I haven't seen.
That's the top of the mountain, guys.
The route continued along the mountain ridge with a very technical downhill section. It was a combination of mud, pebbles and big loose boulders. Every step here craved immense concentration. One wrong step here, combined with the strong wind and sub-zero temperatures, would leave me in a big trouble. We were made aware that extraction times in case of severe injury could easily take more than 8 hours, depending on weather and helicopter availability. The descent into the valley, in my dreams, meant that I can enjoy a nice and idyllic run along the river. The reality was different, of course. The ground was soaked, and I often sank to my knees in the drenched mosses. It was somewhere around here, after around 20 falls on my butt, that I realized that I have to change my attitude. I imagined how my kids would love to be here to jump and roll in the mud, and hop in the rivers.
Woo!
These thoughts really propelled me forward. I really started to enjoy the moment. I realized that this is why I'm here. To feel alive. Soon, all of this will just remain as a very distant memory.
Approximately kilometer 17, day 2. I'm right on top of this ridge. There's this log here. It's beautiful. It's quite chilly up here, so I'll try to push on so that I don't freeze. Wow. Finally reached something more runnable. This magnificent forest here. Lovely weather, but swamp. Okay. Whew.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
1643.
The original plan for day 3 was to summit the highest peak of Knoydart and run along the ridge of the mountain before finally reaching the finish line. The weather, however, had other plans for us. The highest peak was covered in snow, and the weather forecast promised northerly wind with gale force gusts in combination with rain and more snow at the higher elevations. Due to the very high risk for the runners, Beyond the Ultimate changed the plan in the safest possible way. This meant that we would retrace the final 25 kilometers from day 1 back to the finish line near Inverie.
Enjoy this tailwind. It will change.
The good thing about retracing our steps was that unlike road running, 2 trail runs are never the same. I would now be able to run again on the beautiful coastal trail where I was so exhausted at day 1. The weather forecast proved to be true. It soon started raining and basically didn't stop for the next at least 10 or 12 hours. The strong winds were also correctly predicted and started right on time for the climb. The key was to push on and maintain the pace. Even if you stopped to tie your shoelaces or fill in water, the body temperature started to plummet immediately. The final meters before the finish line, it all felt so surreal. I was moving relentlessly without sensation of touching the ground. I went beyond the ultimate for me. I remember becoming suddenly emotional. I recalled the training. I thought about my family and loved ones who have supported me in all my quests, no matter how crazy or stupid they were. None of this would be possible without them. Lesson learned. As Wayne Dyer once said, the only limits you have are the limits you believe. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, so that you can follow me on my biggest adventure so far. Watch me how I prepare and run 230 kilometers in the wild savannas of Kenya, among some of the last remaining wild rhinos.